I'm Ray Smith, and my specialty is language, and in particular academic writing, but that isn't important today. You are,
Nana.
tell me more.
Um,
What do you want to do?
a lot of different things right now. I'm into ESL and language instruction, but also, I don't know.
Okay, well, I mean, the nice thing is you're in your master's, you don't. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Israel.
Uh-huh.
I moved to Bloomington when I was 10, so
Oh, you're from there. And so you went to your undergraduate here? Okay. And you are?
I'm Destin, so I'm mostly focused on the language education part
Uh-huh.
of the program title. I am very interested in literacy at the same time though, but I think it is in the language education, second foreign language acquisition.
So your aim is to teach, or?
So I graduated with linguistic engineering, so it was an
Really?
individualized major.
Mm-hmm.
So
From where?
At IU,
Mhm.
program. I developed my own major, linguistic engineering, and so in that I created a language, and so I'd like to use this program to help me to
Mhm.
teach that language.
So you were in the IMP when you were here? Yeah. Yeah. So what was your major when you were here?
fine arts.
Was fine arts? I'm trying to think of anybody I know in fine arts, and I can't. So we won't play who do you know. Well, I was thinking, Chanel was talking about graduate school and what it was like, and it occurs to me that when I go back when dinosaurs ruled the earth and I first started graduate school, God, I was wearing a blue blazer and a khaki pants. God, it never changes. Anyway, I felt like I was at someone else's family reunion all the time. But you guys aren't going to have the same trouble negotiating things that folks who are new to Bloomington will, so I'm not going to fool with that. What you've got here on the top is, in essence, the web page, the departmental web page as for master's students. And I'll just, rather than slog through that, which would put me to sleep, and I think you'd be justified murdering me if I did that. What I thought I'd do is go to the last page, which is some tips for master's candidates. And if you're going to transfer credit in, and you might, fill out your program of study first in your application for transfer, and so you can submit them really at the same time. They're not going to let you transfer. I learned to my horror the other day that they're not going to let you transfer credit in unless you have a program of study in. And the program of study, since we're having a private conversation, I think the program of study is actually always a work of fiction. And by that I mean it is literally true that I don't know from one semester to the next what I'm going to be teaching. And so for you to magically understand what's going to be offered, let's say this coming spring even, might be a tough thing for you to figure out. But nevertheless, look at the course schedule for last spring, and the odds are pretty good that except for 750s and some of the 630s, if it's offered in the spring semester one year, it's going to be offered in the spring semester the following year. Anyway, feel free to make something up that fulfills all the requirements, and all the requirements are specified in these first two pages here. 15 credits in the major, and I want to talk in particular about L500. If you haven't registered for L500 yet, I recommend in the strongest terms that you do so. You've got to take it. And my suspicion is that the cohort of incoming master's students is a little bit bigger than you two, I suspect. maybe not. But in any event, it's actually good to come in with a group of people for reasons having to do with foxholes and shared experiences and so on. So anyway, I would suggest you take 500, which takes some of the pressure, you know, what to take, what to take. Well, I take L500 for sure. Do you know who your advisor is yet?
Mitzi Lewis.
Okay, do you know who yours is?
Yeah, Mark.
Okay. Both of them are going to take you, or going to tell you to take L500.
I'm registered.
Okay, you're registered for it, are you? Okay. Okay, so I'll shut up on that.
Just because I was like, we're gonna have to talk more about what to do
Yeah.
in the future, so
Yeah.
might as well just take it.
L500, L500 is a lot like L600 in that it depends, which is the equivalent course for PhDs. And it really depends very strongly on what the person teaching it feels is current issues. And I think Matthew Bumbleau is teaching L500. And it would not be, I'm sure he's already worked it up, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world for you to email him and ask him for the syllabus beforehand. But anyway, take it now.
Tried that.
You tried it, and he said,
Well, he didn't know he was
you
teaching
emailed
it.
me.
Yeah.
You emailed
He
me.
emailed half the department, I think.
He thought I was teaching it. Well, we can go. Gian, do you know who's teaching 500?
For this semester, we have one online 500 and on-site it's Matthew.
Yeah.
So it is
So
Matthew
who's
Bumble.
the-
But I think he just found out.
Dr.
basically,
Hines,
Yeah.
saying, you know,
Mary
trying
Beth
to-
Yeah, he thought I was
Right.
teaching it.
Right.
Yeah. So it is Bumble. Yeah.
For on-site.
Yeah, for on-site.
I'll actually be in the office.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And that is
Dr. Hines.
Professor Hines.
Mhm.
Yeah. And her emphasis is more on, social justice and critical literacy as opposed to the language side.
Okay.
So that may or may not influence your choice. It doesn't make any difference which one you take, finally.
Is there a chance there won't be an in-class person if people don't send?
I only see one person registered.
For the
Okay.
Yeah,
inside.
it almost always
On
makes.
site.
But someone, I mean, it does seem sort of crazy to me for you to be a residential student and have to take it online. But stranger things have happened.
Are you,
It's not
do you live here?
Yeah, I live in Bloomington.
Why are you taking it online?
I work for the university full-time and I have 3 kids. So it's much easier to just
Yeah.
hop online after work
Yeah.
instead of having.
Where do you work?
For UITS. So I work for the support center, that number, and now I'm transferring to the library for accessibility.
So, anyway, if it doesn't make, there's no liability to taking it online. So I don't like online courses myself, but other people feel differently. If I had 3 kids, I love online courses. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see how that pans out. The other thing you have to take is L605, a capstone course. And that's typically offered in the spring, although very rarely it's offered in the summer. But it's offered in the spring. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
Do you usually take it last?
Usually people take
Okay,
it
that's what I
last.
thought.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think if you took it at the end of your first year, it would probably not be the end of the world, but most people do take a capstone at the end. The way I designed the class, in essence, you're reconstructing the effect of your program of study on you and your notions of literacy. So mine has to be a capstone, but it's not a federal law that you have to take it at the very end of things. And then you've got 3 additional literacy, culture, and language education courses, 9 credit hours. And then there's Y520. You can take Y521. Ji-Yun, jump in when I get this wrong. You can take Y521 as an alternative. the lore is that Y520 is easier. And what you're really doing in Y520, as I understand it, it's hard to keep track of their curriculum. It's not in our department. But Y520 is more about the reading and understanding of empirical studies, as opposed to Y521, which actually has more to do with the production of empirical studies. So and once again, the lore is that Y520 is easier. That too, I think, is offered only online. Yeah.
I'm taking 521.
You're taking 521 or 520?
521.
Good. I think you'll like that better anyway. And then the substantive core. Now, I have never understood why this is called a substantive core. It makes no sense to me. I understand, inquiry is code for research methods. Substantive core, as far as I can tell, is code for nothing. I mean, an insubstantial core. But anyway, you can look through there and see what's being offered, and see who's offering it. And ask your advisor, see who's teaching it. There may be somebody whose approach to it is congenial to your course of study. But those substantive core courses are outside our department.
Yeah, 550 was, I kept trying to find that, and I couldn't even find a record of it in the new, like, OCQ or whatever.
Oh, cognition and semiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a fastball right down the middle for you.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, though,
Well, yeah, not for this semester, but.
Yeah.
Same.
like, for instance, a course you might want to take is taught by Dan Hickey, who is, I forget what the number is, but that has to do with cognition and online stuff.
Is it the psycholinguistics one?
No, it's in the learning sciences
Oh, okay.
department. Yeah.
Like the adolescent education?
It's not listed. It's not listed here, but there are instances in which you can take things outside this substantive core. All you need to do is talk to your advisor about it. It might certainly be something you could take within your elective requirements.
Are the elective requirements allowed to be inside of LCLE? There's so many courses inside the program that I wanted to take
Yeah.
and then realized.
In general, they're pretty inflexible about that when they have to be taken outside the department. Now, it seems to me that you could probably specially petition. It's hard to tell. Talk to your advisor. Advisors can arrange to have things bin in some instances.
And I think I'm going to try that because I wanted to at least get one of the certs, the training certificate, the teacher certificate.
Yeah.
And that requires you to take like 5 in total LCLE courses that are not here, so they obviously have to
Right.
get the first 3 and then
Right.
there's not enough space for.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to your advisor about special dispensation. Now, it's an important thing to know that if you want to get a certificate, you have to apply that's not something you can just walk into. But my suspicion is if you're admitted to the program, you won't have any trouble getting admitted to the licensing or certification program. Anyway, I'm not going to slog through any more of that. That's about as stultifying as I want to be. But I do want to talk about some tips. Transferring credit in, taking L500. You can take the thesis option, which I don't know, you haven't told me as much about your interests as you have told me about yours. But you, in fact, may want to do that. And you may as well. I mean, I don't know. In my experience, the people who take the thesis option are usually folks who are likely to go on to the PhD here or elsewhere. And so the master's thesis might be a chapter out of what may turn out to be your dissertation. It may turn out to be an article that you're working on. It may be emphasis on a specific subject that has piqued your interest. And you have to talk to your advisor about serving as the director of that. And I think the master's thesis is not nearly, it's not nearly as grueling as the PhD as you might imagine. They're usually somewhere between 40 and 80 pages. So in essence, it's like 2 seminar papers glued together. Question?
Well, my undergrad thesis was 100 pages.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, how long is it usually?
Yeah, well, they can be longer. But I'm saying, in my whole time here, I've read 2 master's theses, and one of them was about 50 pages, and the other one was about 80. So they're not dissertation. I mean, I hesitate to call a dissertation a book-length study, but
The good ones.
they can be. Yeah, mine was about 50 pages longer than it needed to be, and my wife's dissertation was actually 670 pages long. It should have come with a complimentary burro so it could be carried by anyone who read it. Okay. Fill out the program of study at your very earliest convenience. Once again, I mentioned that that's a highly speculative endeavor, but I would recommend that you do it pretty quickly. I've mentioned that you have to apply to the pertinent licensing or certificate program. You cannot apply for graduation without having submitted the POS. Now, I'm going to head a difficulty for you off at the pass. In my experience here, and I'm sorry this is on tape, in my experience here, the graduate office has not been terribly quick in responding to changes in program of study or transfer of credit in. It's a very small office, and they're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of students. So it's a good idea to file for graduation about 6 months before you graduate. Okay. And by graduate, I don't mean going through the ceremony. I mean actually graduating. Okay. The other thing on here is be thinking, and I know this seems perhaps jumping the gun here, but be thinking about whether you're going to go on to the PhD or EDD here. Many do, or elsewhere, and this may affect your choice of classes in the master's. For instance, you can, if you want to take 600 or 700 level courses other than the required ones, go to it. I mean, seriously, you're not going to find yourself dazzled or outthought by the PhD candidates. It doesn't happen that often. There's no stigma attached to being a master's candidate in those classes. In fact, you may want to look at the 750s that are coming up and see whether those suit you. You know the difference between the PhD and the EDD in case you're thinking about it.
One is in the educational school for the teachers, right?
Well, they're both. The distinction is not that clear, but let me just take a stab at it. The EDD tends to be less theoretical and more practical. It does not necessarily mean that you're necessarily going to teach. Okay, it doesn't mean that at all. But the odds are pretty good that you are. Question is where. And the PhD tends to be more theoretical, and most people attempting to get a PhD believe they have university teaching in their futures. So that's an important difference. And because nothing can answer all questions, talk to your advisor. Who's your advisor again? Oh, Mitzi. And you have Martha. I'm right next door, and I'm there a lot, so if Martha's not in there, she won't mind if you poach. So drop on by. But do you have a project that you're interested in following in the Masters?
The
Pardon?
research project?
Yeah.
I don't really know what's happening.
It's early yet, yeah. At the end of 500, maybe 2 or 3 courses in, you might. If you were jumping into the into a time machine, what would you like to be doing 6 years from now?
Excellent question. I'm really interested ideally in international comparative education,
Uh-huh.
possibly, maybe involving English instruction, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Cool. A person you should take courses from would be Serafine Colonel Molina and Farida Pawan. Those are two people. So in a sort of odd way, you'd want to follow people, and maybe even Beth Samuelson, who was in there. But those three people would be people that you'd want to touch on. And the other thing too is, if you're doing comparative education, you might look into the department used to be the department formerly known as higher education. And do you know what the name of that department is now? Higher education and leadership something or rather.
Let me check on the website.
Yeah.
They call it like.
Anyway, a guy you may want to take classes from would be named Bradley Levinson, who teaches classes that sound to me like they'd fall within your interests.
Higher education and student affairs.
Higher education and student affairs.
Yeah, they call it HISA.
Yeah, if you're interested in semiotics, the other thing you could do, although I'm the semioticists in the department would be Beth Samuelson, Colonel Molina, and maybe even in second language studies.